So in this video, we'll talk about monopoly pricing and a simple price discrimination concept. Now, what are monopolies? Monopolies are when there's only one seller in the market. There are some reasons why monopolies exist. The first reason that a monopoly might arise is that the monopolist controls a key resource. This is the case for De Beers, which controls most of the world's diamond mines. The second reason why monopolies might arise is if governments give them monopoly rights in the form of patents, trademarks, or copyrights. In this case, no other firm can produce that product or a process, and the holder of that patent or trademark has the sole rights to that product. The third reason why monopolies would exist is in the case of huge fixed costs in the market, and the size of the market is such that only one firm can serve that market at a cheaper cost than if they were larger firms. We call this a natural monopoly. Utility companies would be an example of a natural monopoly. The key reason of monopoly is that there's only one firm. Because there's only one firm, that single firm is a price taker. Unlike competition, when the firm takes price as given, in monopoly, the firm is the price maker. Because there's only one firm in the market, the industry demand curve is the entire monopolist's demand curve. Now, the demand curve is downward sloping. What that means is that as price decreases, quantity demanded increases. So as a result, if the monopoly wants to sell more by increasing the quantity, there are two competing effects that take place. The first is the output effect. So as a monopolist is selling more, they'll earn higher revenue. However, to sell more, they have to lower the price. So the price effect works in a competing direction. By lowering the price, revenue can decrease. So the optimal pricing is a toss-up between these two. The monopolist is trying to manage the output effect with the price effect in coming up with its pricing decisions. So the key question is, what metric does a monopolist follow to maximize their profits? So the key condition for profit maximization is when marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So the demand curve is downward sloping. So we have the demand curve here. In a monopoly, the demand curve is always the average revenue curve. The marginal revenue curve is twice as steep as the demand curve, so it's going to be under the demand curve, but twice as steep. And the marginal cost curve typically is upward sloping. So where MR equals MC is right there, so this will pinpoint the profit maximizing condition for a monopolist. We can drop a line down to find the optimal monopolist quantity. Now the next question the monopolist has is what price to charge? Well, at this Q star, they will charge the highest price possible, and that's given all the way up to the demand curve. So in a monopolist will be producing Q star output and will be charging P star as the price. Now, coming back to profits, the average cost curve is the standard average cost curve, which is the U-shaped average cost curve. It hits the marginal cost curve at its lowest point. And profits are given as the difference between the price and the average total cost curve. So this shaded area is the monopoly profit. And because the monopolist is the only firm in the market, they can sustain these profits even in the long run. In competition, when existing firms make a positive profit, new firms enter, and eventually prices get driven down, profits dissipate. But in a monopoly, because this firm is the only producer in the market, there will not be any more entrants, and the monopoly will sustain these profits in the long run. So now let's examine the effect of welfare on a monopoly. If there is competition, the optimal output will be where the marginal cost hits the demand curve. A monopolist, though, keeps quantity limited to Q star. So a monopolist is producing less and charging a higher price than what a competitive firm will charge. As a result, there are less buyers in the market, less is sold, and the shaded red triangle is the monopoly loss. We call this the deadweight loss. And this loss exists because the monopolist has restricted the output in the market by supplying less and charging a higher price. In competition, there is no deadweight loss because more is produced at a lower price, so more people can buy that product. Now, a monopolist does not have to do this simple pricing where they are charging the same amount from all consumers. What a monopolist can do is engage in price discrimination. With price discrimination, a monopolist, if they can separate out the market between the high value and the low value buyers, might charge a different price to each segment and thus selling more and also extracting some of the deadweight loss that they might have incurred in the previous case. But the key condition here is that the monopolist should be able to separate the buyers in these two segments. If monopolists cannot do that, then these two markets can trade with each other and drive down some of the monopoly power. So let's see how price discrimination works. This basic formula captures markup pricing. A monopolist will charge a price above the marginal cost in response to the elasticity. Now, if you recall, elasticity captures the buyer's responsiveness to the product. So now suppose we have two kinds of buyers. The first segment is highly price responsive, and the second segment is less price sensitive. So in this case, segment one, which is a less price sensitive segment, will have a lower elasticity, we say 1.25. Maybe there's a second segment, which is highly price sensitive, segment two, and elasticity of demand for that segment is 4. Again, if you recall, these numbers indicate the responsiveness of buyers to a change in price. So the second segment will respond a lot more to the same percentage change in price than the first segment. And now for simplicity, let's say that the marginal cost is 10 because it's the same product that's being supplied. Now, if the monopolist can distinguish between these two groups and keep them separate, they can have different pricing strategies for each of these groups. For example, for group one, a monopolist applying the same formula will then be able to charge a price of 50 for the product when the marginal cost is 10. Again, we're using the same formula, we're just plugging in the numbers, and we can get the price. I can plug in the marginal cost 10, can plug in elasticity at 1.25, and simplifying this, we get price equals 50. Now let's see what difference price sensitivity makes to this pricing strategy. For segment 2, elasticity was 4. As a result, a monopolist can charge only $13. However, if the monopolist charges a higher price, this segment will not be able to buy this product. So even though they are making a lot of profit here, but they're able to now capture the second segment, which would not have bought the product had the price been fairly high. But again, the key condition for this to work is that the monopolist should be able to distinguish between the two segments. Let's see an example of this in operation. This is software Stata that I use in my research. Now, Stata has two-tiered pricing. There was a separate price for the business segment and a separate price for academic segment. For the academic segment, you have to send your student ID or faculty ID, and then they get approved, and then you're able to get this pricing. Now, because Stata can separate out the educational buyers from the business buyers, they can engage in a two-tier or price discrimination. So for the basic model, which allows limited variables, or Stata intercooled, they don't offer this to the business segment, but they offer it to the academic segment. This is used by students for research, and for a lot of educational purposes, the software is sufficient for the needs of the segment. But then standard edition allows for more variables, but here we see price discrimination coming into play. They charge a significantly higher price from the business segment than from the academic segment. And then as you get more and more features, then the price differences again start emerging. The most popular version of Stata, which is multiprocessor with 4 cores, Stata charges $995 from the business customers per year, and they charge $695 from the educational customers per year. So here we see that because Stata can segment these two groups into different markets, they're able to offer them different prices. But the key thing for this to work is to be able to prevent arbitrage from taking place. So the business consumers should not be able to buy the software from the academic consumers. As a result of this two-tier pricing, what we see is that both consumers can buy this product, and this actually is welfare enhancing, because now even the low-value buyers are able to buy the product, as well as the high-value buyers which can afford to buy the product too.